Hello and welcome. We use the word management all the time, right? We talk about managing our time, managing a team, even just managing to get through the week. But what does that word really mean, especially in the world of business and organizations? Well, it might seem simple, but it's packed with history, with theory, and it's incredibly important. So today, we're going to dive in and really unpack it.
So let's start with the big question. What actually is it? Is it just about being the boss and telling people what to do? Is it some kind of special talent you have to be born with? Or is it something you can actually learn? For a long time, people have tried to nail down one single definition. And as we're about to see, how we think about it has changed a lot. We're going to peel back all the layers on this idea, starting with an old, simple concept and building up to how we see it today.
So here's the game plan for our journey. We'll kick things off by looking at an older, kind of outdated idea of management, just to see where we've come from. Then we'll get into the modern way of thinking about management as a process. After that, we'll break down its core characteristics. You could almost call it the DNA of management. We'll explore why it's so important, and then we'll wrap up with a classic debate. Is management an art, a science, or is it a full-blown profession? All right, let's start by jumping in our time machine and rewinding the clock a bit. The first real attempts to define management were super straightforward. They really only focused on one thing: getting the job done. This was the traditional way of looking at it, born in an era that was all about command and control.
This quote right here from a pioneer in management theory named Mary Parker Follett is probably the most famous traditional definition you'll find. It's short, it's sweet, it's easy to remember, and it gets to the core idea that a manager's job is to hit their goals not by doing all the work themselves, but by directing the work of other people. For a very long time, this was it. This was what everyone understood management to be. The manager was the artist, and the employees, well, they were the tools used to create the final masterpiece.
But, as companies and the world started to change, this simple definition began to feel a bit off. It started to show some major cracks. In today's world, it's just not good enough. For one, it's really vague. It tells you the end result, getting things done, but it doesn't tell you what a manager actually does to make that happen. Plus, it kind of sounds manipulative, doesn't it? Like people are just pawns in a chess game. It also really treats employees like they're just a means to an end, like cogs in a machine, which totally ignores their humanity. And finally, it completely misses the boat on the complex social and psychological needs of workers today, who, let's be honest, want a lot more than just a paycheck. So all that dissatisfaction with the old definition led to a whole new way of thinking. Management isn't just an art. It's a structured, ongoing process. And that shift in language from art to process is a really big deal. It takes us away from a simple top-down, command-style model to something way more dynamic and complete. And here it is, the modern definition. Let's really break this down because every part matters. Process tells us it's a series of connected actions, not just one thing. Working with and through others sounds so much more collaborative, right? Less manipulative than the old way. And then you've got the two superstar words, effectively and efficiently. The definition also adds that crucial little phrase, by efficiently using limited resources, which is so important because it acknowledges that in the real world, you never have unlimited time, money, or people. So the modern idea isn't just about getting things done, it's about achieving the right things in the right way with what you've got. Okay, so what is the real difference between being effective and being efficient? This is a core concept you absolutely have to get. Effectiveness is all about the end result. It means doing the right things. Did you hit the target? Did you complete the goal? If your goal was to produce 1,000 widgets and you produced 1,000 widgets, congratulations, you were effective. But efficiency is all about the how. It means doing things right, using the least amount of resources possible, like time, money, or materials. Think of it like this. Two archers are trying to hit a bullseye. Both of them hit it, so they are both effective. But the first archer did it with just one arrow, while the second archer took 5 arrows. The first archer was also efficient. In management, being effective without being efficient is just too costly, and being efficient at doing the completely wrong thing, well, that's just pointless. Great management is the sweet spot where you have both.
Now, this diagram is a perfect way to visualize the whole process we've been talking about. Look over on the left, you've got your inputs. These are all the resources a manager has to play with: people, money, buildings, information, you name it. Then, right in the middle, you have the engine of management, the core functions: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. A manager takes all those resources from the left, channels them through these functions, and what comes out on the right? The output, achieving the organization's goals. This shows so clearly how it's a continuous, dynamic flow, not just a one-off task.
Okay, so we've got our modern definition locked down. Now let's break management down even further. Let's look at its fundamental nature, its essential characteristics.
What is the basic DNA that makes management? Well, management. First and foremost, management is goal-oriented. It doesn't just exist for the sake of it. Every single thing a manager does, every activity, is pointed towards achieving very specific, pre-decided goals for the organization. For a business, that goal might be making a profit or having the happiest customers. For a hospital, it's all about patient care. Without a clear goal, management is basically just spinning its wheels. The success of any manager is ultimately judged by how well they achieve those goals.
Second, management is a continuous process. It is not a task you do once and then check off the list. Nope. The functions of management, planning, organizing, directing, controlling, they're all happening all the time, often at the same time. A manager is constantly planning for what's next, organizing resources for today, directing their team, and then controlling the outcomes to see if the plan is working. It's a never-ending cycle that keeps the whole organization moving forward.
Third, management is a group activity. This is so important. It's all about organizing and coordinating the efforts of a whole group of people. It takes all the different skills and actions of individuals and unites them into one focused collective effort. An organization is a collection of people, after all, and management's job is to make sure they're all rowing in the same direction towards that common goal. It's not a solo act. It's inherently social.
Next up is a really interesting idea. Management is an intangible force. Think about it. You can't see management. You can't touch it. It doesn't have a physical shape, but you can absolutely feel its presence. You feel it when you walk into an organization that's running like a well-oiled machine, where people are motivated and goals are being met. And you definitely feel its absence in a place that's chaotic, inefficient, and where morale is in the basement. Management is that invisible force that creates order and drives results.
And finally, management is pervasive or universal. What this means is that its core principles are needed in every single type of organization. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a massive global company, a small local coffee shop, a school, a hospital, or even a political campaign. The basic ideas of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling are needed everywhere. The specific situation might change, but that fundamental need for management is a constant.
Okay, so we know what management is, and we know its core DNA. But so what? Why does any of this actually matter? What's the real-world impact of good management on a company, on its people, and even on society? Let's get into its incredible importance.
The impact is absolutely massive. Good management helps achieve group goals by giving a common direction to everyone's individual efforts. It makes sure resources are used effectively, cutting down on waste, and getting the most out of every person and every dollar. It creates a solid organizational structure, so everyone knows who's responsible for what. And this is huge. It also helps employees reach their own personal goals for their careers, which makes them way more motivated. It creates harmony by bringing different people together to work as a team. And if you zoom out, effective management is essential for the growth of an entire society. Well-run organizations create wealth, they create jobs, and they create innovations that help a whole nation move forward.
All right, for our final section, let's tackle a classic debate. We've defined management. We've seen why it's so important. But how do we actually classify it as a field of study? Is it a creative art? Is it a systematic science? Or is it a formal profession, like being a doctor or a lawyer? Answering this question tells us a lot about what management really is.
To figure out if management is a true profession, we can basically check it against a list of criteria. And as you can see from this table, it's kind of a mixed bag. First, does it have a specialized body of knowledge? Yes, for sure. There are thousands of books, theories, and university degrees like the MPA dedicated to it. But is entry restricted based on education? Nope. Anyone can be made a manager, no specific degree required. Is there a mandatory professional group you have to join, like the Bar Association for Lawyers? No. And is there one single code of ethics that every manager has to follow? Again, no. So what's the verdict? Well, right now, management doesn't meet all the strict requirements to be called a profession. But, and this is important, it is clearly moving in that direction. We call this journey professionalization.
So if it's not quite a profession, is it a science or an art? The answer is it's both. Management is a science because it has this organized body of knowledge with its own principles and theories that have been tested over time. But because management deals with people, and people can be unpredictable, its principles aren't exact like in physics or chemistry. That's why people often call it a soft science. At the very same time, management is an art. Why? Because it depends on the personal skill, the creativity, and the judgment of the individual manager to apply all that scientific knowledge in the real world. Think of a doctor. They have all the medical science, but it takes art and skill to apply it to a unique patient. A manager is the same way with their team. So the science gives you the knowledge, but the art is how you use it.
And that brings us to the end.
We've seen management grow from a really simple idea into this complex, fascinating process, a blend of art and science that's absolutely vital for any organization to succeed. But the world is always changing with new technology and new challenges, so I leave you with a question to chew on. As we look to the future, what do you think is the single most important skill a manager will need to have? Thanks for joining me.